They say a smile can hide 1,000 stories, but mine hit a storm. Every morning before facing the world, I'd stand in front of the mirror, forcing my lips to curve upward. Not because I was happy, but because I didn't want anyone to know how broken I was inside. I was known as the positive one, always cheerful, always helping others, always saying, everything will be okay. People loved my energy. My friends admired my strength, but no one saw the nights I spent awake, staring at the ceiling, replaying my failures like an endless movie. I smiled at everyone, but when I was alone, that smile faded into tears. It wasn't always like this. Once I believed in dreams. Once I believed in love. But sometimes life takes everything you care about and leaves you with just silence. 3 years ago, I lost my job. The same week, my mother fell sick, her hospital bills piling up faster than I could handle. I remember standing outside the hospital with trembling hands, holding her reports, wondering, how do I stay strong when I feel like falling apart? But I smiled, because she needed hope, and I refused to let her see my fear. Behind that smile was pain. Behind that laughter, anxiety. And behind those "I'm fine" messages and a person desperately trying to survive. Days turned into weeks, weeks into months. I kept pretending that everything was under control. My mother's condition worsened and my savings disappeared faster than I could count. Each morning I smiled at her, telling her she'd recover soon. But inside I was drowning. At night I sat alone, scrolling through job listings, sending out applications, getting rejection after rejection. One night, when yet another "we regret to inform you" email arrived, I broke. I dropped my phone, covered my face, and cried, silently, painfully. I was tired of pretending to be strong, tired of hiding behind that mask of positivity, tired of smiling when all I wanted to do was scream. A friend called me that night, her voice full of laughter. She asked, "Hey, how are you?" And I said, "I'm great," but I wasn't. And that's when I realized something. Sometimes people ask how you are, but they don't really want to know. They want the easy answer, not the truth. One evening I sat beside my mother's hospital bed. Her eyes opened weakly. She looked at me and whispered, "Don't lose your smile, my child, that's your strength." And I wanted to tell her, "Mom, that smile is the only thing I have left." But I couldn't speak. The lump in my throat was too heavy. That night I went to the hospital rooftop. The city lights blurred through my tears. I thought about everything I'd lost, my career, my confidence, my peace. And for the first time I whispered into the night, "Why me?" And then silence, no answer, no sign, just the wind brushing against my face and like a quiet reminder that even in pain, life goes on. That was my breaking point, but little did I know. Sometimes you have to break before you can rebuild. The next morning I sat in the hospital cafeteria, staring blankly at a cup of coffee that had gone cold. My eyes were red, my heart empty. I had no energy left to fight, to smile, or to pretend anymore. Across from me sat an old man, maybe in his 70s. His clothes were simple, his hands trembling as he lifted his own cup. He looked at me, smiled softly, and said, "You look like you've forgotten how beautiful the sunrise is." I looked up, startled. He chuckled. "I used to forget too when my wife was sick." But then I realized something. Gratitude is not about being happy, it's about being alive. His words hit me, like a whisper straight to my soul. I didn't reply, I just listened as he continued. He told me about how he lost his wife after 40 years of marriage, how the grief nearly destroyed him. But he said, "One morning I saw a bird building its nest in the rain, and I thought, if that tiny creature can keep going, maybe I can too." Then he smiled again and added, "Young lady, behind every smile is a story. Sometimes that story is pain, but sometimes it's faith." He got up to leave but turned back and said something I'll never forget. "Don't wait for life to be perfect before you start being thankful. Gratitude heals faster than medicine." I sat there frozen. My chest felt lighter, my breath steadier. That old man didn't know my story, didn't know my struggles. Yet somehow he spoke the words I desperately needed to hear. That night, when I went back to my mother's room, she smiled weakly again and said, "You look different today, like the world isn't so heavy anymore." I held her hand, tears filling my eyes, and replied, "I met someone who reminded me, life is still worth smiling for." That was the moment something shifted inside me. For the first time in months, I looked at my reflection and saw not a victim, but a survivor. Someone who could still choose gratitude even in the middle of pain. Days turned into weeks. My mother's condition didn't improve much, but her spirit, It was unshakable. Every nurse who entered her room left with a smile. She always had something kind to say, even while lying in pain. One day I asked her, "Mom, how do you still find the strength to smile when everything hurts?" She looked at me, eyes shining with quiet wisdom, and whispered, "Because smiling reminds me I'm still alive. And if I'm alive, I still have something to thank God for." Her words echoed in my heart for days. I realized how often I had complained about things in my career, my loneliness, my failures. Yet here was my mother, fighting for her life, still teaching me how to live. That night I wrote something in my journal. Gratitude isn't what you feel when life is easy. Gratitude is what you choose when life is hard. From that day on, I started small. I thanked the nurse who brought me water. I smiled at the janitor cleaning the hallway. I sent a text to my boss saying, "Thank you for understanding." I even wrote a message to my father and the man who left us years ago, saying, "I forgive you. I hope you're doing well." The strangest thing happened. My world began to feel lighter. The same hospital corridors that once felt cold and suffocating now seemed filled with warmth. It wasn't because life suddenly became better. It was because I became better. Gratitude had changed my vision. One afternoon, as I was helping a nurse, I noticed the same old man again, the one who had spoken to me in the cafeteria. He was leaving the hospital, smiling faintly, holding a single sunflower. He waved at me and said, "Remember what I told you?" I nodded, tears forming. He grinned. "Good, keep smiling, not to hide the pain, but to honor the fight." He walked away into the rain, his yellow sunflower glowing against the gray sky. That night, I sat beside my mother and told her everything. About the old man, about gratitude, about how her strength was teaching me to live differently. She held my hand, looked into my eyes, and said, "Then promise me one thing, when I'm gone, don't stop smiling. Carry my joy with you." Tears fell down my face, but this time I smiled through them. For the first time, that smile wasn't forced, it was real. It was hers living through me. A few weeks later, my mother passed away peacefully. She left this world with that same soft smile on her face, the one that always told me, "Don't cry, everything will be okay." The hospital room felt heavier without her. No machines, no whispers, just silence. But somehow it wasn't the silence of loss. It was the silence of love that had done its job and set me free. After the funeral, I sat in the park where my mother used to take me as a child. Children were laughing. The wind moved gently through the trees. For the first time, I didn't see the world as cruel. I saw it as fragile, precious, and alive. I remembered the old man's words, "Gratitude heals faster than medicine." And my mother's final request, "When I'm gone, don't stop smiling." So I smiled. Not to hide my pain, but to honor the woman who taught me to see beauty even in suffering. That day, something inside me changed forever. I realized that every person walking by, every stranger on the street, carries their own story of silent struggles hidden beneath their smile. And that's when it hit me. Behind every smile, there's a warrior. Someone who's been broken but still chooses kindness. Someone who's cried in silence but still gives love freely. Someone who's fallen countless times yet wakes up and says, "Today I'll try again." Months passed. I went back to work. People told me, "You look stronger now." But they didn't know. It wasn't strength, it was gratitude. Every time I faced a challenge, I whispered one thank you, Mom, for teaching me that peace isn't found in perfection, it's found in perspective. Now, when I smile at someone, it's not just a gesture. It's a message. It says, "I see you. I understand you. You're not alone." Because the truth is simple. Life will never be without pain. But if you fill your heart with gratitude, even your tears can reflect light. And that, my friend, is the story behind every smile. Don't wait for happiness to find you. Create it through gratitude. Behind every smile, there's strength, faith, and love.